Joining us now, my good friend, Susan Crabtree, senior White House correspondent of the Washington Examiner. Susan, great to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
Now, Susan, would you do me a favor? I'm not getting your Susan alerts that come over my email. I want my Susan alerts. Can you sign me up for that?
Definitely.
You got my email, right? Sign me up, and if they have a text thing, I like the text thing. So put my mobile number in there so I get my Susan alerts, because I heard through the grapevine you had a big story coming out. I didn't even get my alert, but word travels fast in Virginia, as you know. And I heard through the media grapevine you had a blockbuster coming out, so that's why I wanted to have you on today. And it concerns what the Republicans can do once Obama goes forward with this illegal executive amnesty order.
Right. Well, we heard yesterday that President Obama is expected to go forward with it early next week. And so already the House and Senate are preparing for what they want to do in terms of defunding any type of INS, Immigration and Naturalization Service, activity so that he won't be able to implement this executive action and provide the legal relief for millions of illegal immigrants. So the Republicans, conservative outside groups, and people like Representative Louis Gohmert, of Texas, they are trying to say, let's not pass this big omnibus bill, the spending bill, as the Republican leaders, John Boehner and Mitch McConnell, want to do, to avoid fights with Democrats. They want to cut a deal in the lame duck to fund the government all the way through September of next year, just to avoid any messy process, brinksmanship, any possibility of a government shutdown early next year. But these conservatives are arguing that is not the right way to go, because it just gives away the store. It basically just gives away all of their leverage and power in terms of defunding this so-called amnesty, other priorities they want to defund, repealing Obamacare, rolling back these power plant regulations that the EPA has imposed, a host of different priorities that they say really need to be defunded gets taken off the table if they pass this massive spending bill that will keep the government running until next year. So there are many conservative groups and members of Congress that are really creating some headaches for John Boehner, even though just right after this big wave election, the Republican Party is split on how to go about providing spending for the government.
Now, Susan, let me get this straight. So the only leverage, and we've been saying this for some time, the only leverage that Republicans have to stop Obama's blanket amnesty executive action that might be illegal is by defunding the levers of government that would basically carry out his order, right?
That's right. You have the Department of Homeland Security bill. They say that it should be, all of these spending bills should not be wrapped together in a big happy package right before Christmas that is filled with ornaments for different people, different little goodies for people that can't be scrutinized. People like Gohmert told me yesterday that he would like to see all these bills come up separately in the new year, and then the DHS bill, the Department of Homeland Security, where the INS operates underneath that umbrella organization department, that should come up separately, and they won't fund that particular bill. Now, you might think that would hurt, say, the Secret Service, other Border Patrol agents, but he says, no, those are essential employees. Doing so, they would still have to go to work. They would still be funded. It's just the INS that aren't considered essential employees that would have a problem.
So if Boehner and McConnell are successful, what they want to do, as you're saying, is pass this omnibus blanket funding bill to go through September, so all the arguments go off the table and they can not be seen as this kind of a bickering gridlock thing. But if they do that, what you give up is any ability to stop the president from giving up to 11 million people what amounts to amnesty or legal status. Is that my understanding?
Well, the Republican leaders argue that there will be other must-pass bills that Obama wants. and that they can attach a rider defunding the amnesty at that point in time. But other conservative members are saying, no, this is our best chance right now. This is funding the government is the best bill to attach such a defunding mechanism to. So don't, try to pull the wool over our eyes. This is the major bill that everybody in Washington cares about because it's a must-pass and it funds the government. So there is a big split. But if you want to know the leaders' arguments are that McConnell yesterday said he was not willing in any way, shape, or form to shut down the government again, and that he is really concerned. The Senate is really concerned about 2016. They know that they have about 25 of 34 seats up are Republican, and so Democrats are already saying, Republicans are just renting their seats in the Senate for 2 years. We're going to get it back because there's so many seats up, and the map does not look good for Republicans in 2016. So, the leaders know this, and they're really nervous and scared about losing the Senate and coming off as exactly what the voters said they didn't want, very more Washington gridlock, more government shutdowns. But the conservatives like Ted Cruz and Mike Lee argue the opposite. They say the government shutdown didn't hurt us last time around, even though there was a lot of hue and cry over it. And in fact, it probably helped us gain the majority. So there's this big debate going on within the Republican Party right now on Capitol Hill.
Well, the bottom line is, why not? Why don't they just to give away leverage in a negotiating situation? I'm not ever in favor of that. How does that help the side that you're on, giving the leverage away? And that's really what the leadership is once again trying to do. Now, it gets back to the conspiratorial theory, and I don't buy into a lot of this stuff, but it kind of drives back to the conspiratorial thinkers on the right who say at the end of the day, McConnell and Boehner, they're for Obama's amnesty. They just want to get that behind them. And if Obama does their dirty work, see, then they don't have to deal with it, right? Then it's just done. Everybody's got amnesty. Everybody's here legally. They can go on to something else, talk about another issue, talk about Obamacare or something else. They don't have to deal with immigration reform because Obama would have done their work, and they can simply say, well, we couldn't stop it, right?
Well, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce is very pro-amnesty or whatever you want to call it, but pro-legal relief for illegal immigrants. So you have John Boehner earlier this year, before the border crisis, indicating to President Obama that, yes, he was wanting to bring a bill forward before the election.
Right.
And then you had that border crisis, and things changed,
right.
And his caucus his conference got a better gauge on him and reined him in. But yes, I think that Boehner is leaning that way, and I'm not sure about Mitch McConnell. He's definitely focused more of his attention on repealing Obamacare during his own election. But you have Reince Priebus, RNC chairman, coming out and saying before the election that they would do everything in their power to stop the president from going forward with this amnesty. So you have a lot of dynamics going on in the party, and Reince Priebus is saying, listen, if you pass this omnibus and you don't do anything right away to prevent or undermine the president's executive action, then you're undermining my promise that I made before the election day.
And the difference is Boehner and McConnell are focused on power and leadership, and Reince Priebus understands that he's got to serve the grassroots activists in the party and rank-and-file Republicans that don't want anything to do with this amnesty thing because they know it's going to drive down wages, take jobs away, entitlements are going to grow even further, and at the end of the day, they're all going to vote for people that have a D by their name. That's how Obama changes the face of America. Back with senior White House correspondent, Washington Examiner, Susan Crabtree. So, Susan, what happened? Where does this thing come to a head? What's the timing on it?
We have the government will shut down if they do not pass a spending bill by the end of December 11th. So on December 12th, there's a problem. What I'm hearing is that the conservatives really want to pass just a continuing resolution. The problem with that is that the Republican leaders fear the Democrats will be more motivated in the spring. They want it to last 3 months and revisit basically all the spending bills either in January or throughout the next 3 months and pass them separately. The Republican leaders think, oh, that's just kicking a can down the road. We don't want to spend all of January, February, and March, our first chance at renewed leadership and control of Congress, both chambers, having a fight over a government shutdown again. We don't want to have these big brinksmanship budget battles with the CNN clock ticking down on when the government's going to shut down. And so that's what's at stake here. They really want to make this about just passing all those appropriations bills, taking all those fiscal fights off the table for a year, and they'll revisit them basically next year at the same time when the fiscal year ends, which is October 5th. So, it's I think it's really a matter of, Republicans would like to just move forward without any headaches, and conservative rebel rousers are saying, no, we were brought here to change Washington, especially when it comes to spending policy, and we want to do our best to do that, and this is our best chance right now, right after a wave election, to pick a fight with the Senate Democrats over spending matters and over amnesty, and they're saying, if we don't do it now, we're not going to have a good chance to do it again.
So let me get this straight. So Republican establishment people basically want no change. In other words, what they're proposing would have been the same thing that happened had Harry Reid still been the majority leader and had they not gained another 13 seats in the House. If Democrats held all their seats and there was no change, this is exactly what would happen. So exactly why did we vote for these people in November? Why even bother if there's no change?
Well, when it comes to the president's amnesty, they think Republicans are telling, and they huddled with Boehner yesterday, the whole entire conference before they reelected him. He's saying there'll be other bills to do this on. We don't need to have another, threat of a government shutdown, more gridlock in Washington right off the bat. There'll be other bills that we can attack and undermine the president's amnesty on. So he's trying to convince them to move on from this and that there'll be other chances, but they are saying this is the best bite at the apple we're going to get.
They're right. If they don't act on this now, we're going to get amnesty, and then at the end of the day, they're not going to do anything. And again, secretly, I think this leadership would be happy if Obama did this big executive action. So then they can get that. Look, all they want to do is put the tough issues off the table. Well, immigration, let's get that issue off the table so we don't have to deal with that. Spending, let's get that off the table. We don't want to deal with that. Well, let's get all these appropriations off the table. Just let Obama spend whatever he wants so we don't have to deal with that. Well, what the hell are they going to deal with, and why are they in there?
That's exactly what the argument is. And they're saying, though, it depends on whether you want to focus on repealing Obamacare next year
They're not
or
going to
whether
repeal Obamacare because they don't have 2/3 to repeal it. That's a complete waste of time. Susan, love you to death. We're out of time. Go to WashingtonExaminer.com. Susan Crabtree.